Hey, today is Monday, December 7th, and you're watching The Great Last Rewatch. Today we're watching the Season 3 episode, Futher Instructions. This is a Locke-centric episode, and basically the flashback is just Locke getting duped. I didn't really like this flashback so much. He picks up a hitchhiker, a young guy, takes him to this community that he's been living in, which happens to be growing pot, and the guy that he picks up happens to be an undercover cop, and so Locke basically gets all of his friends arrested. Back on the island, Locke wakes up in the jungle. This is the first time we've seen him since the season 2 finale, so he's woken up, he's just been blasted out of the hatch. He sees Desmond run by naked. He can't speak. He decides to build a sweat lodge so that he can talk to the island, figure out what he needs to do. And in the most interesting part of this episode, I think, he has a vision, and Boone comes and talks to him, and Boone puts him in his wheelchair and wheels him through an airport and says, "You've got to save somebody in this airport." It's not Claire, Charlie, and Aaron. They're safe for now. It's not Saeed, Sun, and Jin. Saeed has that covered. It's not Hurley. Hurley's working the desk all by himself. It's not Des, he's fine. There's nothing you can do for Jack, Kate, and Sawyer right now, who are being wanted at the security gate by Benjamin Linus. But then he climbs up an escalator, and he finds Echo's stick, and that's who he's got to save. So Locke and Charlie trek to a bear cave, because he's been taken by a polar bear. And Locke pulls some MacGyver stunts and burns the polar bear and pulls Echo to safety, and they get him back to the beach camp. On their way back to the beach camp, Echo says that Locke needs to save Jack, Kate, and Sawyer. And in a paralleling from the backstory, kind of making it sound like maybe Echo's been possessed by the island, like Sawyer was possessed when he was talking to Kate, and it sounded like Kate's stepfather back in season 2. He echoes what we hear in the backstory and says, "After all, you are a hunter," because in the backstory he has a conversation with the kid about whether he's a hunter or a farmer. In the jungle, Hurley and Desmond run into each other, and Desmond says something about Locke giving a speech about having to go save Jack, Kate, and Sawyer, and Hurley thinks that's kind of odd because he just ran into Locke in the jungle and he had said something about not going to save them. But then we see later in the episode that Locke does have that speech, and Hurley is kind of putting 2 and 2 together that maybe Desmond is seeing the future, which I think only Hurley would pick up on because he reads comic books and he believes in that sort of more far-fetched stuff. But I like that. I think that makes Hurley a beloved character, a lovable character. And then we awkwardly and kind of annoyingly get introduced to Nikki and Paolo. When Locke comes back to the beach camp, everybody runs up around him and asks about if, Jack, Kate, and Sawyer are okay, and they're talking to Hurley, and Nikki says, "Hurley, when were you going to tell us this?" It was really kind of annoying. Hurley has just gotten back to the camp, at least it seems that way. Maybe he's been there for a little bit, but not long. And she's like all up his pants about it, like, "Geez Louise, girl, cool your jets." Charlie has a line that's pretty funny when he's trying to communicate with Locke about, when Locke can't speak what he wants, and Locke's trying to say he needs to talk to, Charlie's trying to guess who he needs to talk to, and he says, "The trees?" That's funny because I've heard trees are great conversationalists, which is kind of funny and amusing, and I know they put that in there because in The Lord of the Rings, which Dominic Monaghan was in, he spends most of the 2 towers being toted around the forest by a tree, chit-chatting. Leslie, you are back tomorrow with Every Man for Himself. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
We're gonna need to watch that again.
Another part of this flashback, well, not really part of the flashback, but Ralph of the Dharmalars used to say that, had a big theory going on for a long time that he held on to really tightly, that this was actually the first flash forward that we have, which would make this a much more interesting flashback, to be completely honest, but it turns out that it's not, because we see what happens to Locke after he gets off of the island.